North Korea just fired more than 10 ballistic missiles into the sea. And if you're thinking, we've seen missile launches before, you're not wrong. But the timing and the setting of this one are what makes it dangerous. Because according to South Korea's military, these missiles were launched from an area near Pyongyang at around 1:20 p.m. local time. And they went toward waters off North Korea's east coast, right as U.S. and South Korean forces are in the middle of major annual joint drills. Japan's Coast Guard also reported detecting what could be a ballistic missile. And Japan's public broadcaster NHK said it appeared to have landed outside Japan's exclusive economic zone. And the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said it's aware of the launches, is consulting with allies and partners, and based on current assessments, this event does not pose an immediate threat to U.S. personnel, territory, or allies. So tonight, I'm going to break down exactly what we know, what we don't know, why this launch happened now, and what the next move could look like. Because the most dangerous part of any missile crisis isn't the missile. It's the misunderstanding. Before we get into it, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because when events move fast in East Asia, the headlines lag behind the reality, and we follow the confirmed details as they come in. And I want you to participate in this one. Drop a comment right now. Do you think this launch was mainly a warning to the U.S., a warning to South Korea, or a signal to North Korea's own domestic audience? Type A, U.S. B, South Korea. C, domestic audience. What we know right now is this. 1, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff say North Korea fired more than 10 ballistic missiles. 2, the missiles were launched from an area near the capital, Pyongyang, at about 1:20 p.m. 3, they went toward waters off the country's east coast. 4, Japan's Coast Guard detected what could be a ballistic missile, and reporting cited by NHK suggests it landed outside Japan's exclusive economic zone. 5, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command says it's aware, consulting, and assessed no immediate threat right now. That is the confirmed backbone of the story as of this moment. Now, here's what we do not have in that initial confirmed package. We do not yet have, from that report alone, a detailed breakdown of what specific missile types were fired. We do not have confirmed ranges for each projectile. We do not have a confirmed splashdown map. And we do not have confirmation that any missile crossed into restricted zones, because outside Japan's EEZ is not the same thing as not dangerous. So when you see people online declaring they know exactly which missile it was and exactly what it means, slow down. This story is about what is confirmed, what is likely, and what is speculation. And now we go to the next piece, why this happened today at this exact moment. This launch comes as the United States and South Korea are conducting large annual joint military drills. Reuters describes river crossing drills involving hundreds of U.S. and South Korean troops with equipment including tanks and armored combat vehicles as part of the annual Freedom Shield training. Source, and there's a reason this matters. North Korea has a long pattern, decades, of reacting to joint U.S.-South Korea exercises with tests, launches, or threats. The allies say these drills are defensive and readiness-based. North Korea routinely says they're rehearsals for invasion. That narrative is consistent and predictable. And that predictability is exactly why missile launches during drills are so dangerous. A radar misread, a misinterpreted trajectory, a false report of impact, a decision made in minutes, not hours. That's how crises happen. So the fact that this launch occurs during major drills isn't just symbolism, it's testing, it's strategic messaging. But there's another layer to the timing that a lot of people missed. According to Reuters, just days ago, on Thursday, South Korea's Prime Minister Kim Min-seok met President Donald Trump in Washington to discuss ways to reopen dialogue with Pyongyang. And Reuters reports that Trump is eager for an opportunity to sit down with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. So think about how North Korea could interpret that moment. On one hand, joint drills. On the other hand, talk of reopening dialogue. From Pyongyang's perspective, that can look like the same old pattern: pressure plus invitations. And whether that's what Washington intends or not, the result is North Korea choosing a familiar tactic: missile launches that force everyone to pay attention. Now, here's the key question for this video. Is this launch a message or is it a test? And the truth is, it can be both. So let's break down what a launch like this can be designed to accomplish. Without guessing beyond the evidence, what this launch could be trying to do, there are four main strategic functions of missile launches, and North Korea has used all four over the years. Function 1, deterrence signaling. This is the simplest. North Korea demonstrates it has weapons that can fly, that can be launched quickly, and that can be repeated. It's not about hitting something today, it's about being believed tomorrow. Function 2, readiness and training. A barrage of more than 10 launches, if that's what it was operationally, can stress test command and control, launch crews, fuel systems, transport systems, and timing. Function 3, political leverage. Missile tests reshape the diplomatic calendar. Suddenly, every meeting is about North Korea. Suddenly, every official statement must mention North Korea. Suddenly, an issue that might have drifted down the news cycle is forced to the top. Function 4, domestic narrative. North Korea's leadership is obsessed with internal legitimacy, strength, resistance, standing up to foreign pressure. Major drills by the U.S. and South Korea can be framed domestically as a threat, and missile launches can be framed domestically as response. Now, which of those four is the main driver today? We can't say with certainty from one report, but we can use the context to understand why this is happening now. And this is where I want to ask you a question that most channels don't ask. If you were North Korea, what would you want the world to believe after today? Would you want the world to believe you can overwhelm defenses with volume? Would you want the world to believe you can launch from near Pyongyang at will? Would you want the world to believe that drills equal consequences? Tell me in the comments, what do you think the intended belief is? Now we move to the next layer, what the immediate reactions tell us, reactions, and what they really mean. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command says no immediate threat, and they're consulting with allies. That's a deliberately controlled message. It's designed to do two things at the same time. 1, avoid panic. 2, avoid giving North Korea the satisfaction of looking like it forced an emergency. Meanwhile, South Korea's military quickly released detection details, which signals readiness and transparency. And Japan's detection, plus the reporting that it appeared to land outside the EEZ, is designed to reassure the Japanese public while still documenting the event. But here's the part people don't understand. When officials say no immediate threat, that does not mean no danger. The danger comes next. The danger is escalation cycles. So the real question is, what happens after the first volley? Because in this region, missile launches can become conversational. One side does drills, the other side does launches. The first side reinforces deterrence. The other side claims provocation. And the loop continues until something breaks. So now let's talk about the strategic chessboard in East Asia and why this launch is not just about the Korean Peninsula. The bigger board. There are 3 overlapping realities happening at once. Reality 1, the Korean Peninsula is still technically at war. There was an armistice, not a peace treaty, which means every action is interpreted through a war lens. Reality 2, alliances are tightening. The U.S. maintains about 28,500 troops in South Korea, and the drills are a visible reminder of that integrated posture. Reality 3, missile technology changes the timeline of decision-making. If you can launch quickly, leaders have less time to verify. That increases the risk of miscalculation. Now, here's why this launch is particularly attention-grabbing. It wasn't one missile. It was more than 10. And volume matters, because even when missiles aren't aimed at land, a large number of launches can signal capacity, stockpile confidence, or tactical doctrine. Now, I'm going to be very careful here. We do not yet have confirmed details in the Reuters report about the exact missile models and their ranges. But we can still talk about why more than 10 inches is qualitatively different than 1. In military planning, a single launch tests, multiple launches demonstrate. And a barrage can imply tactics designed to saturate or complicate defenses. Again, not saying that's what North Korea did today. I'm saying that's why volume alarms planners and South Korea handle that kind of signal. What the Allies will do next. There are predictable steps after a launch like this. First, confirm the facts, how many launches, what trajectories, what altitudes, what splashdown zones. Second, share data across allies. South Korea and Japan have sensors. The U.S. has regional assets. This becomes a combined intelligence picture. Third, calibrate messaging. Public statements are never just information. They're deterrence messaging. If officials overreact publicly, they amplify the effect. If they underreact, they risk looking weak. The middle path is confirm, condemn, consult, continue readiness. Fourth, decide whether to respond militarily in a visible way, usually not with direct action, but with readiness demonstrations. Now, I want to pause and ask you something. If you're the U.S. and South Korea, what's the best response to avoid escalation? Option 1, respond with a show of force. Option 2, respond with diplomatic outreach. Option 3, respond with sanctions and isolation. Option 4, do nothing visible and keep drills going. Which one do you think is smartest? Comment 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now we go to the part everyone cares about. What happens next and what the danger scenarios look like. What could happen next? Pollucible scenarios. Scenario 1, North Korea stops here. This is a single-day signal, and the cycle cools. In this scenario, you may see statements, condemnations, and continued drills, but no immediate follow-up launches. Scenario 2, North Korea escalates with additional tests, not necessarily aimed at territory, just more launches or a different weapon category. The aim would be to dominate the news cycle and raise the cost of allied drills. Scenario 3, an accident creates a crisis. This is the nightmare scenario. A missile malfunctions or a splashdown occurs closer than expected to a shipping lane, or a warning system misinterprets a trajectory, or civilian aviation is endangered. These are the sparks that force emergency rooms of diplomacy. Scenario 4, the launch becomes part of a negotiation cycle. This is the cynical but historically common pattern. Pyongyang raises tension, then offers talks to lower it, seeking concessions or relief. I'm not saying that's happening now. I'm saying this is why timing matters. Reuters notes discussion of reopening dialogue is in the air at the same moment the launch occurs. Now let's go deeper into the why now in a way most people don't, because missiles are not launched into a vacuum. They're launched into a political environment. Why now? 3 pressures. Pressure 1, the exercises Freedom Shield drills are visible, photogenic, and easy for North Korea to portray as threat. Pressure 2, the diplomacy chatter. When leaders talk about reopening dialogue, North Korea has an incentive to show it can still disrupt the environment. Pressure 3, attention economy. North Korea competes for global attention. And in a world where multiple crises compete every day, a multi-missile launch forces cameras to turn. Now I'm going to shift to what you should watch for in the next 24 to 72 hours if you want to know whether this is getting better or worse. Because the key is not what people say. The key is what they do. These 7 things to watch next 72 hours. Thing 1, do we see a second day of launches? If yes, escalation. If no, possible pause. Thing 2, do we get confirmed details about missile types and ranges? That will signal whether today was short-range training or something else. Thing 3, do Japan and South Korea raise alert levels or shift defense posture? Even small changes matter. Thing 4, Do the US and South Korea adjust the tone of Freedom Shield messaging? If they emphasize defensive even more, they're managing escalation. Thing 5. Do we see new diplomatic statements about dialogue? Reuters reports Trump is eager for dialogue. Watch whether that. Thing 7. How does North Korea's own messaging frame it? If they call it response to drills, that's one track. If they call it a test of a new system, that's another. Now let's address one of the biggest myths about North Korea missile launches. My busting. The myth is if it landed in the sea, it's not serious. Wrong. Missile launches into the sea can still be extremely serious because they normalize frequency. They condition markets and publics to accept higher risk. They pressure airlines and shipping routes. They create accident possibilities, and they allow testing without crossing a line that forces immediate retaliation. So today's no immediate threat assessment can be true. While the long-term risk increases, now I want to speak directly to something that affects whether this escalates: information chaos. Because the first hours after a launch are when misinformation spreads fastest. So here's how you keep your feed clean. If you see a claim online, ask, is the source named? Is it an official military statement or anonymous social media? Does it cite a time, location, and agency? Is it consistent with what credible outlets are reporting? Right now, the confirmed facts we have are anchored in a Reuters report, citing South Korea's military, Japan's Coast Guard detection, and U.S. Indo-Pacific Command's statement. Anything beyond that needs confirmation. Now, since this is a 30 to 40-minute breakdown, we're going to do something important. Put this into historical pattern without sensationalism. Because North Korea has been here before. The region has been here before, but the risk doesn't come from repetition. The risk comes from fatigue. When missile launches become routine, people stop paying attention. And when people stop paying attention, leaders may take bigger risks to get attention back. That's escalation logic. So the question is, are we entering a period where launches become more frequent, or is this a one-off response to drills? We don't know yet. But we do know the strategic environment is tense enough that even routine actions carry higher stakes. Now we zoom in on what the drills themselves represent and why North Korea focuses on them so aggressively. Reuters notes that on Saturday, hundreds of U.S. and South Korean troops conducted river crossing drills with heavy equipment, overseen by the commander of their combined forces. A river crossing drill is not a symbolic event. It's an operational capability. It's one of the classic capabilities required for large-scale ground maneuver. So if you're North Korea's military planners, that's the kind of image you point to and say they are practicing how to move fast. Again, the Allies call it defensive readiness. North Korea calls it rehearsal. Both sides use it for their narratives. Now, a major question you might have is, if Trump wants dialogue, why do the drills continue? Because deterrence and diplomacy run in parallel? That's not a contradiction, it's a strategy. But it's also a risk because mixed signals can be interpreted as bad faith. Now let's talk about the diplomatic window and whether it is real. Reuters reports that Trump is eager for an opportunity to sit down with Kim Jong-un and that South Korea's prime minister discussed ways to reopen dialogue with the North. That tells us something important. The idea of talks is not dead in Washington. But the real question is, does Pyongyang want talks on terms that are possible? Historically, North Korea has wanted security guarantees, sanctions relief, and recognition. The U.S. and allies have wanted limits, verification, and de-escalation. Those positions can overlap, but the overlap is harden, and missile launches harden positions, unless they are part of a deliberate pressure then negotiate cycle. So watch for what comes next, a hardening of rhetoric or an opening. Now, I want to include a section specifically for viewers in South Korea and Japan, because this is not just geopolitics. It's daily life, on screen, what this means for people on the ground. If you live in South Korea or Japan, Launches like this have real impacts. They influence emergency alertness. They influence aviation route risk assessments. They influence how safe people feel. They influence politics. So here's a question for viewers in the region. Do you feel safer with stronger joint drills, or do you feel they increase risk? Answer in the comments, because that debate is central to how governments set policy. Now, to keep this clean and monetization safe, we're going to avoid the most common clickbait move, pretending we know what the next missile will be. Instead, we'll talk about escalation ladders. Worse than today would be a missile landing inside a country's EEZ, a missile passing over Japan, a launch timed with a major political event, a test of a new category that shifts deterrence calculations, a direct threat to specific bases, or a clash at sea or in the air tied to the drills. Better than today would be no follow-up launches, a controlled diplomatic message, a de-escalatory statement from one side, or a reduction in provocative messaging during the remainder of the drills. Now, here's a final point before we close. The biggest risk in East Asia is not that leaders want war. The biggest risk is that leaders want control, and control gets lost. And that's why even routine launches deserve serious attention. So here's what I want you to do. If you want follow-ups, subscribe and turn on notifications. If you want this video to reach people who want facts over panic, hit like. And answer these 3 questions in the comments, because I'm going to read them. Do you think North Korea will launch again within 72 hours? Yes or no? Do you think the drills should continue unchanged, be scaled back, or be expanded? Do you think Trump and Kim meet again in 26? Yes or no? This story is still developing. But the confirmed baseline is already clear. North Korea fired more than 10 ballistic missiles toward the sea as U.S.-South Korea drills continued. Japan detected what could be a ballistic missile, and U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said the launches pose no immediate threat while consultations with allies continue. Stay here. Stay accurate. And I'll see